Welcome to another episode of the What Goes On podcast, and this time we are here with guitarist, producer, composer, engineer, mixer, masterer, the Mr. Wonderful Andy Sneap. Hello, Andy.
Hello.
How are you doing?
How are you doing? Yeah, I'm good. I'm good, thank you. How are you?
All good. You know, COVID is keeping us well inside.
Yeah.
But at least it's Friday.
That is true. It is Friday.
Or Wednesday or Saturday.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Groundhog Day, isn't it? I mean, it really is. Every day's the same at the minute. So
Yeah.
I've actually
Very strange.
I got back into the country the day lockdown happened. Actually, it took me 3 flights to get back from America, and I came back. It was like 6 o'clock in the morning. I got into Heathrow. And drove back. I had to pick a guitar up on the way back. And actually, I've only been to the store once since then.
Really?
Yeah, and that was a 10 o'clock mission at night, just before it shut, to get some raisins, and that was it.
Oh, nature's sweet.
Yeah.
Staples.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, what a bizarre, I feel like I'm a bit of an onion, and on various, I'm going to just mash and mix metaphors here. I feel like myself or my identity and everything is just variously unraveling at different levels. And when I think, okay, everything's kind of calming down, I'm all right. It will just kind of start again, and something else will knock me out. It's almost like a leg being knocked out from under a stool, and then you just kind of balance again, and then there's something else goes. And it's just very odd psychologically at the moment.
I tell you what is odd, I think. I mean, especially if you want to. I've got I've had the TV on in the background at the studio here all the time, and just the way that the news is sort of thrown at you, and it just wears you down after a while, doesn't it? You're not going out and you're hearing all this negativity all the time. The last few days I've just had the TV off, and I've just been ignoring the outside world, just in my own little bubble. I always refer to it here at the studio. I've got 15 acres of land down here. It's like Waco waiting to happen again. I've got the shotgun. Just wait for them. That line set up.
Oh, that's good.
So, and when did you start kind of getting into music? When did that kind of happen? Did you have a musical family?
No, not at all. I totally unmusical, actually. My brother, I've got a twin brother who bought me a Status Quo single for my 11th Christmas. Just randomly out of the blue, and I loved it. I loved the energy of it, and the vibe, just the heaviness of it. I'd always sort of gone, when I was watching Top of the Pops as a kid growing up, I always liked sort of the metal bands and the punkier bands on Top of the Pops, but that single sort of started it, and then I was checking out AC/DC and Motorhead and Maiden after that, and I went to see Iron Maiden on the Beast on the Road tour when I was 12. And I was just blown away. I knew then it was what I wanted to do, and I started playing guitar when I was 12. Started learning.
Yeah.
I put Sabbat, my first band, together when I was 15 when we put that together, and then we had to wait till I was 18 to sign the first record contract. So by the time I was 18, I was in Germany recording my first record.
I was going to say, because I looked earlier, and the first album came out when you were, possibly only 18, but I guess 19.
It came out when I was 18. We had to wait until I was 18 to sign the deal, and that would have been July in '87. And then in September '87, we were in Hanover recording the album by then. So
that is bonkers.
When I look back now, and I look at like an 18-year-old kid, and that's not disrespecting anyone, but it's just like they seem so young now. And I would, to me, it was like, oh, off we go, living in another country, recording music, and it was, it's a bit mind blowing now. But we didn't think anything of it. We just got into it and enjoyed it,
What kind of?
Go on.
I was just going to say, it's like what? So going from forming the band and then to getting the deal. I mean, what kind of were you gigging like loads? Were you know, what was?
We were gigging locally. I was really into sort of the tape trading scene back then, and sort of writing to all the fanzines. So I was sending a lot of cassettes off, and you know, making contacts with people like Don Kay, Paul Miller at Kerrang, Tommy Vance at Radio 1. I sent him a cassette, and you know, Tommy Vance phones me up one night, just going, "Oh, we really like it." It's like the radio's talking to me down the phone, you know. So with Tony Wilson and Tommy Vance at Radio 1, we got a Radio 1 session, and we also Jeff Barton, Kerrang gave us a couple of pages in Kerrang, and it sort of coincided within the same fortnight. So we sort of had all these things line up nicely, really, where we had a big splash in Kerrang. We had a Radio 1 session, and we weren't even signed. So that basically got us signed. And it just sort of also, we were in the right place at the right time, writing something, you know, I think because we were young, we were sort of soaking all this stuff in that was coming up on the underground, you know, Slayer and Exodus and Metallica and Merciful Fate. We were into all these bands that were current at the time. So there was all these elements getting blended into an English band that wasn't really doing anything like that. So it just put a fresh angle on things, really.
Stepping back a tiny bit, because we've kind of skipped over from Status Quo until your first record deal. Yeah. I'm imagining something happened in between there somehow. Two things that fascinate me. Firstly is I wonder what it is that draws someone, you, me, whoever, to music in general, but specifically to a genre.
It was the energy for me. I mean, I used to watch, I don't know if you remember, there was a show on, I think it was Channel 4, ECT, that used to be on a Friday night, like tea time viewing, and it was basically an hour-long heavy metal show. I mean, you won't get that now, but it was amazing because you get all the sort of the bands that were, you know, getting a bit of a name for themselves in Kerrang, all playing live on this TV show, and we had the Tube as well, of course, which you get Priest and Ozzy and what have you on there as well. So it was always that, it was the energy of it, and just the, you know, you're 15 years old, you're bouncing off your walls, you know, listening to Twisted Sister, you know, loving every minute of it, and the energy of the gigs, and back then as well. I don't know if you remember, but there'd be proper UK tours happening. There'd be 20 dates in a UK tour. They'd be going around all the city halls. Where I am here, there'd be like Derby, Nottingham, Manchester, Sheffield. I used to go to Sheffield City Hall all the time. So you catch a band sort of 2 or 3 times on the way around the UK. And there'd be a band round every month, pretty much. You know, even if it was a smaller band like, say, Y&T or, you know, I don't know, you get Saxon coming round. You know, Maiden would always do that round of things. Gillan would be around, Ozzy would be around, you know. So there'd be all these things happening. And, of course, we had Monsters of Rock just down the road from here as well. Yeah. Which, to me, back then, Donington was a real gathering of everyone, wasn't it? You know, you had sort of 7 or 8 of the name bands on one stage, so it focused everyone into one area. So it was a real scene back then, real cool scene, you know.
Do you think, and maybe I'm reading too much into it, but you said it was a real scene back then. Do you feel like there's something that's been lost in that? I mean, it's the DIY aspect of it, and what you said earlier about I think feels like.
I think there was more of a us and them thing back then, where bands were more like superheroes in a way. You know, they were unobtainable. You know, where now with the way the internet is and the way that you know what I'm saying is they're not like that. They're not like gods anymore. Well, maybe that's just because I'm sort of part of, you know, the bigger bands now. I don't know whether that's just. I mean, I know when I meet fans now, you know, so the trembling, you know. So it's kind of like I was back then. But that might just be my point of view that's changed now. But to me back then it was, you know, guitar heroes were icons, you know. So. Yeah.
And when the only way that you can have any interaction with them is at a gig or through a magazine, when you see someone's face printed in a magazine like that, it seems like there's an order of magnitude higher importance than seeing something on an Instagram feed or Facebook
exactly.
feed.
You sort of, and I used to say that about record deals as well. You know, a record deal back in the 80s, you got a sort of seal of approval, hadn't you? It's like, you know, you're worthy of a record deal, because it was difficult to obtain, you know. So it was always put you up a level, you know. And obviously, if you're on a major label, you're up another level, you know. It was sort of seen like that. So, yeah, I don't know. I think back then, and it, you know, the information wasn't as easy to get back then. You know, Kerrang had been fortnightly, so you'd read every little bit of Kerrang, and if you got a mention in there, it was a big deal.
Yeah,
you know? Yeah.
And this is what, sorry, I'm kind of hogging the question asking here, but
you're good, man. You're good.
something that has like really fascinated me is in the kind of genre of music that you inhabit, you have to be really, really good, and you have to practice a lot. At 15 years old, what was it that motivated you and kept you going to practice so much to get that level of technical ability?
I mean, you know, when you're that age, you know, if you're learning a language or whatever you're learning, you just take it all in. You know, I mean, I just used to sit there in my bedroom just playing constantly back then. Hours, you know, hours and hours and hours learning stuff. And I was having lessons with a guy called Dave Halliday, who was in the band Hell originally back in the 80s. And he was great, you know, really took me under his wing, and every week I'd go round to his house and we'd be breaking songs down, and I'd be learning bits, you know.
Yeah.
So I was just fascinated with it. I was fascinated with the sound, with the playing, and just wanted to be in a band. I used to have pictures of bands on my wall, and, you know, pictures of bands in rehearsal, and you know every bit of gear in there. You know, you got a live album and you'd read about what gear they took out with them, and it'd be amazing, you know.
Yeah.
That is interesting that you, first of all, that you like deconstructing the songs, because for lots of people, they don't want to demystify it. And so, like, you know, when you finally learn that song that you had as this halcyon moment in a band's career, and then you finally learn it, it sort of takes the fairy dust away from it. But it's interesting that you didn't ever have that. You always deconstruct, work out why it works, and then
it's a way of learning, really. You know, you obviously you figure out what key it's in and what they've done over the top, and it was just a learning curve, really. You know, especially with writing my own material, because it gave me an insight on how to apply what they were doing, you know, onto my own stuff. So,
and having another band member involved is helpful, because they already have an insight into how it all goes together, and they can kind of.
And it's funny, actually, because there's a few guitarists I know. I mean, Richie, who's in Priest, he's one of these guys that's played covers all his life. You know, you ask him to play any song and he can just play it. I don't know how he does it, but he can do it. And I sort of started playing my own stuff at an early age rather than playing covers all the time. So there's two different ways of looking at it. I mean, it's really taught him well learning other people's material, because he just knows so many styles in and out, where I was sort of just focused on my own thing, got into my own rut in a way of playing the thrash stuff in a certain technique, you know. So in some ways, you know, the way I've learned and played, it does limit you a little bit, and it's good to learn other people's material, because it forces you know, out your comfort zone a little bit.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what doing the Priest thing as for me this time is. You know, it's really pushed me, because trying to learn Glen stuff it sounds simple, but it's just bizarre at times. He's done his own thing where some of the timings he does are so strange, and trying to get your head around it. But it's good. It's a challenge. So I like it.
So once you were in Germany and the album and everything was done, I mean, what happened? I guess it was tour and you know, promoting.
Yeah, we did. We always seemed to be. It always was a little bit of a struggle back then, because the 80s, it wasn't easy to organise things. We didn't have management, so we got one or two tours, which went okay in Europe, but we never got a major tour until we did the second album, and we went out with Manowar actually for 6 weeks around Europe, which was it was the biggest tour we did with Sabbat. But, you know, we did all right. We did, you know, we sort of got a good underground following, and sort of the band's held a decent sort of, not mystique, but decent name for itself over the years, really. You know, people back it fondly. I get a lot of people sort of going, oh, that, you know, I grew up listening to your first 2 albums and it changed my life, you know. And to think that we were, you know, people held us like that, you know, it's quite strange, really, for thinking how young we were when we were writing that material, you know. So
that must be a good feeling.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the gigs that you were doing around Europe, did you have much interaction with the crowd at gigs, or was it, like, again, kind of separated so that it was them and us?
Well, you know, we'd meet the fans and stuff afterwards, but you don't really get an idea of sort of how people see the band, or well, you didn't then, you know, because the way things were reported, and there was no internet, you know, it was a case of just slogging it out, really. And we did a, you know, like I say, a couple of tours. We did the first tour we did in Europe was with Rage and a band called Risk, who were on Noise and SPV. And that didn't do very well. That was, you know, we're pulling sort of 150, 200 people a night, and it was, you know, 6 weeks out doing that. And it's a bit of, after a while. But it was a good experience. So it was nice to get a couple of decent festivals. We did the Dynamo Festival with Exodus in, I think it was 88. I forget what other festivals we did. But that Manowar tour was the main tour we did. But we did okay in the UK, obviously, being a UK band. You know, we did our own sort of runs in the UK. And we could see ourselves going up the ladder with that, what we were doing. So, yeah.
Go on, Matt. You look like you were about to ask something.
Yeah, I was just like checking. So when did you kind of make the transition from sort of more the live stuff to then going more into the studio kind of thing and getting sort of down with the nitty gritty of that kind of?
Well, the band split up in '90, and I was actually, I mean, I didn't know what I was going to do then. I had my own little sort of reel-to-reel setup, really. I had a little Fostex R8 tape machine and a little Fostex 8-12 desk set up at the rehearsal room. So I used to demo local bands at weekends, you know, make a bit of extra money and do my own stuff. So I was always into the recording side of things and fascinated by it. And I was just sort of learning as I went on, really. And then a friend of mine, Pete, who used to sing for, well, still does, sing for Lawnmower Death. He worked at Earache Records in Nottingham. And he went to work at Square Centre Studios, which was a bigger 24-track studio in Nottingham. And they needed a metal engineer, producer guy there, because they've got all these indie bands coming through, but no one to do the metal bands. So he says, you know, you think you come down and have a look, see if you think you can do it. And it was one of those things, to throw myself in there, you know, learning the equipment that was in there quickly, and just doing some demos and getting to know people there, which I did easily. So I started doing all the sort of the local metal bands at this bigger studio. And then Colin Richardson, who'd done Machine Head and Fear Factory, Napalm Death, Pete knew him from Earache Records and got him to come through the studio doing a couple of projects. So I started working with Colin as his engineer, and got on with Colin great. I still do. And when Colin was out in America in '96 doing the second Machine Head record, and he needed an engineer out of San Francisco to work with him out there. So called me up, said, you know, do you think you can come out here and work with me? So I was straight on a plane and got out there. And it was like that, you know, one thing led to another. So I met, you know, all the labels. I met Metal Blade, Roadrunner, Central Media when I was out there in LA. Because we started off in San Francisco, then went down the coast down to LA to mix it. And made some good contacts. And, you know, it's that old thing of you do your job well, do it on time. They gave me some chances to do some smaller albums for the labels, and it all worked out well. So they kept coming back, and I, you know, slowly built up this reputation, and it worked out, you know.
Do you feel like you always had like a producery bent in any case? I was listening to Dumbstruck this morning, and that's really interesting because there are no lyrics on that at all, are there?
No.
And the beginning is really like it makes you feel a little bit like you've got Meniere's disease or something, or if that's the right, no, like vertigo. Makes you feel like you've got vertigo.
Like that. I actually haven't listened to that album for a long time, the third one, but I was always into the studio side of things. It's funny because obviously I've been doing a lot of live stuff the last couple of years, but when I was doing Sabbat, I was always more into being creative and putting the big picture together. You know, that's kind of why I went into production, because I felt I could do exactly what I've been doing before, what I enjoyed, but I wasn't having to rely on anyone else or, someone else not towing the line. As a producer, you're sort of in charge of your own destiny a little bit, really. Mm-hmm. And you're still putting the big picture together and getting the energy back through the speakers and getting everything to fit together. I always did feel that production was something to fall back on in a way. I do really enjoy the live side of things now, but it's a lot more comfortable on the scale that I'm doing things now than it was back then, or even 5 years ago for me. Obviously, doing it where I just have to turn up and play. Yeah, it's great. It's a dream gig, really. So. I've got the best of both worlds at the minute, because I'm in the studio doing what I want to do, and then when it comes up, we've got the live gigs, so great.
So did you kind of get tired of touring fairly early on during Sabbat, or was it just like, yeah, it's cool, I'm young, I'm fairly bulletproof?
Because I wasn't even 20 at the time, so you haven't got the worries of trying to pay a mortgage or feed kids or anything like that. You're just out there having a good time. So yeah, it's and it's the same for everyone in the band. That really gets in the way later on. With the health thing that we did later on. It was all good and fine and good fun, but when you get a 6-week tour come up, you've got people that have got to either give jobs up or take time off. Yeah. The financial side of it comes into play a lot more, so it's not easy, and it's not going to be easy for any bands now, to be honest. But it's not easy for a band, that are a bit older starting out. It's not. It's something where you've got to try and claw some money and be very sensible with the finances when you're organising it.
Do you on the production side, just picking up on something you said before about the big picture and being able to assemble that, do you, firstly, forgive me, my research wasn't deep enough, so I don't know the answer to this question, which I probably should. Do you perform on records that you produce? And secondly, if you don't, do you feel like it's easier to have a kind of broader, wider view of what the end product is going to be because you're not immersed in the performance?
Well, I always look at myself as sort of an unbiased point of view as a producer. I'm coming into it. I haven't written any of the parts or played any of the parts, so if you want an honest point, well, my honest opinion, I'm not leading any way on it. I'm just going to give you at face value what I think of things, which is what you're really paid to do.
Yeah.
I just try and come at it fresh and give it. Focus everything, try and find the strengths within the players and focus the whole thing, really. I'm not playing on other people's records. There might be the odd part where the good thing about being a guitarist, I can actually pick a guitar up and show someone an idea that I've got. And it also, I think it helped me on in the early days because I appreciated how people can feel pressure in the studio and get worried. And so I'm quite relaxed in the studio and easygoing, to the point of where it feels like we're just having a good laugh and enjoying it and trying to get the best out of a person, So there's no sort of watching the clock or, come on, we've got to get this done. It's an easygoing atmosphere for sure.
Yeah, because as soon as it gets a bit tense, everything goes out the window. Right?
Well, it's that old red light fever, isn't it? As soon as the red light goes on, it's like everything goes to shit.
Bit like Matt's intro.
I tell you, I mean, I know it myself, you know, with the pressure I've been under with playing, you know, in the last couple of years, as soon as you step on that stage and the spotlight's on you, it's like the adrenaline, and I mean, you can freeze. You know, it's horrible. It's a horrible feeling. So I know what people are like, you know, coming into the studio when they're not in a studio every day of their lives. You know, it's a big deal for them. So you've got to make it relaxed and make people feel at home and you know, a good working environment, really.
Yeah. And I think that's why self-production of records is quite difficult, because if you're playing on the record, then you're going to have an emotional attachment to any given part, or you might.
To be honest, when I've sort of produced my own stuff, I don't have a problem with that. But that's probably just because the amount of experience I've had. I think some other people do. I mean, like the last Killswitch record, Adam called me up and said, "Oh, you know, can you mix it?" I'm like, "Well, yeah, but you can do that." And he's like, "No, I can't." I'm going around the houses on this, and I know how it gets. And sometimes for me, actually, if I've spent a lot of time tracking a record, it can be difficult to mix, because a little bit of what you're saying, you know, you've heard it so much that you just can't see the wood for the trees anymore. You know, you need to walk away and come back to it. And even with mixers, sometimes, you know, I'll spend the whole day on a mix, don't know where I am by the end of the day, and it's time to just shut the door, have a night's sleep, and then come and listen to it. And the first thing in the morning when you listen to it, go with your gut instinct on it, because you get totally, again, unbiased point of view. And there'll be, you know, I'll spend weeks on a mix, weeks and weeks and weeks, and then I'll come back to it 3 months later, and I was like, why the hell did I do that? You know, there was something in it where I was like, why couldn't I hear that? You know, so you do tend to focus on the strangest things sometimes and not see the big picture, you know.
And I think that's the same. I'm sure Matt would agree. Maybe he wouldn't. Maybe it would just be contrarianism, contrarian. But no, it's the same when you're designing something. You know, when you're designing an amp or a pickup, it's difficult after a certain point to be objective about it. It's because you're so in it, and you do have to just like throw it to one side and forget everything that you know about it so intimately, and then come back to it.
Always go with your gut instinct on things as well. I mean, there's always a reason why, you know, if you've got a niggling doubt about something, there's a reason for that. You know, you've got to sometimes just stand back and go, right, why am I thinking like this? You know, this is sort of mix wise. You know, what is wrong here? You know, and I find if I'm chasing something around a mix, for instance, like trying to get a vocal to, and I can't get it to sit, there's something isn't balanced. You know, there's something in there. You know, you've got to find the problem. You know, you can't start chasing after something. You know.
Yeah, I think. But I mean, I say this all the time. Bore the pants off Steve with it. But it's just like you've got to. You can only make great what you naturally think is great. Yeah. And there's gonna be like a similar thing that. I mean, I know with like the stuff that I design, there's always there's a thread through all the kind of the frequency of all of the pickups, for example, that I'm looking for. You know, I want everything to sit in a mix a certain way for my ears, and then I know as soon as I'll make it and play it. You know with the first chord if it's kind of be there. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And when I first started, I'd sit there like analysing it over and over and over again, and then make tiny little adjustments and like frustrate the hell out of myself. But now it's the point where you kind of play it, you put it together, play. You know instantly if you don't like it, it either goes in the bin or it goes on the shelf. Do you know what I mean? It's that kind of thing. Is there any? Have you noticed any things that you always go for? Have you got like any certain things that you do on like when you're mixing, for example?
No, I mean I'm quite happy to use different equipment, but I think there's always the best way I can describe it. People, you know, go on about an Andy Sneap sound and stuff, but I think it's kind of like what you just said. Then you do things to where you feel it's right. So I haven't got this preconceived idea of what I'm trying to do, but I can kind of hear in my head how I want things to sound. Yeah. I know how things should fit together. It's almost like you tune in a mix. Yeah. trying to get things to fit together. You know, the way the kick works with the bass, the way the guitars sit in there, the way the cymbals sit in the top of the mix, and the high end of the cymbals with the top end of the kick, and where the snare, because the snare's in the middle and the vocals in the middle, where they sit together in the mix. So there's all these things that interact with each other, and whatever tones you've got, you always sort of balance them out to a similar sort of level in a way, and that's what gives it a certain character. And I think that's what I'm hearing in my head is the balance, you know. And there's people that always go after, you know, trying to imitate what I do, but there's no way they're going to be able to. They can have my settings, they can have my samples, they can have my, you know, my Kemper presets or whatever, but you know, they'll get something close. But I think there's something that you can't learn, or it's just something that's in there. It's like any sort of artist, really, that's got a certain stamp they put on something. Any good producer, you can tell they've got a quality that is what gets them the work in a way, because you know, people want that certain something, which I can hear in here.
And that's a subject that's come up quite a few times on the podcast. And going back to what you were saying about not being a jack of all trades in terms of the kind of thing that you can play, I think the other side of that coin is that you have plowed the furrow of that you've kind of perfected and gone
he's gone
way down a furrow in a certain direction, and that means that it becomes you've gone down am I here? Am I back?
You're back. You're back. Yeah.
You were like this for a long time.
Did you miss all of the?
Yeah.
Maybe that's okay. How much did you get of that? Any? None?
You were saying
robot again.
I was. We were talking about being a sort of, you know, specialist in your own genre, really.
Yeah, I think that's.
Yeah, and I basically the thing I was going to say was, oh no, am I back? Yes, I'm back. I'm going to wander around.
I get back. No.
My Wi-Fi signal is pony, and I don't know. It doesn't like me. The router now.
Challenge,
hopefully you can hear me. Can you hear me?
I thought it was more Stephen Hawkins.
Stephen Crokins.
How's that?
Yeah, that's better.
I'm back.
Yeah.
I can't really remember what I was saying. I guess the main point was that if you do your own thing long enough, then it becomes characteristic of you. And I would say that probably the case for your guitar playing and your production. So, and that's exactly what you were just talking about in terms of the Andy Sneap sound. It's because you've kind of found your own path to what you like the sound of.
And I haven't sort of gone chasing anything. I've never tried to copy anyone. Taken inspiration from people, but I've always felt very confident what I'm doing, and always felt, I just always sort of tried to do what I could hear in my head, really. You know, obviously working with Colin early on, it was a bit of a learning curve. And I've learned from other people as well, but I've always just done my own thing, really, and made mistakes along the way. But I think that's a good thing to do, because you're like, right, okay, that's all right, won't do that again. You know, it's I think we all do it, and you know, being in the business for 25, 30 years, you sort of slowly shuffle through and find your own path on things, you know.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, mistakes are that's the good stuff, really. I mean, sorry, go on. No, I was going to just say, I mean, if you're not making mistakes, it means that you're not pushing yourself, and you need to push yourself to progress. So, it's comfort zone stuff again.
Yeah, I mean, I say that about bands as well. You know, you get people who are like, oh, the drummer's not great, blah blah blah. Or like, you know, there's certain, you know, the singers, you know, but it's kind of, it's those limitations within bands that give the bands the character as well. Because the bands will then learn to play around someone's limitations, or or write more melodic music. If you've got a singer that isn't that melodic, they'll write more melodic music to back up the singer, and it'll give a band a certain character. So you can always go in and go, they could get a better guitarist or they could get a better drummer or whatever. But I think bands should grow together. If you've got a good person in the band and you feel there's a relationship there, I think that's far more important, because the band will then develop their own character, rather than pulling good people in. No, it's all right. No.
But again, it's kind of looking at the band itself as like an entity, like an actual sort of almost like a person.
Yeah.
So everything comes together. Like I was saying to Steve the other day, it's like at the end of what's the Power Rangers? Where all the robots come together to create this like mega robot to defeat the baddie in the mini city.
You think about it. I mean, how many bands, do you get where you get solo, guys going off and doing solo albums, and and the solo album will just flop, even though it's a main member. People want that relationship with the band. They want it's like that team to support almost, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's
Okay. It also seems sometimes you need, like in a band situation where you're kind of, even maybe if they're not all writing together, or you're not writing together, but you've got this. Someone will bring a song in, and then the other members have like a valid input into that. Whereas if that main songwriter then goes off and just writes their songs, has their own, there's nobody kind of questioning what they're doing.
Yeah.
Kind of, maybe the other members of the band are like filtering the crappy bits. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I see it happen a lot, and I always say that if we can, when you get, I call it laptop metal. You get the guitarist walking with his laptop. He's got his hack version of Cubase on there. He's written everything, either in GarageBand or Cubase. Programmed all the drums. Everything's at one tempo. Same stuff all the way through, and there's no character at all.
Yeah.
Where if you can then, I mean, it's a great tool that we've got these days. But if you can then take that template and give it to a band, so they can then give it the push and pull, and the drummer might have an idea just to take it into the middle eight, and they might, someone else might just have a key change idea. So give it some personality back from the band.
Yeah.
You're not taking away from the guy that's written the song, but I think it's when back in the day, that you didn't have ways of recording demos like this, so bands would rehearse more, and they'd get more of that push and pull. It would make them better players as well, because they've been playing a lot more as a band.
Yeah.
So you'd know how the drummer would play. You'd write the fill knowing how the drummer plays. Everyone would sort of lean in with the rhythm of the way the drummer plays as well. So it felt a lot more like bands back in the day, where now it can feel very much like one guy writing if you're not careful. So it is good in a way that people can write like this, but I think you need to take it back a stage now and give it back to the band before you actually go in and record it. So I mean, that's what we do here. We've got the live room set up so bands can rehearse, and then we record it. So we'll spend, if we're doing a full album here, we'll try and get the band playing together in the live room first, and then in the separate room we'll then go and track the drums and guitars together just after we've had an afternoon of playing through the songs and getting a bit more of that feel to it.
Yeah. So everyone's kind of dialed in with each other and kind of jamming it.
Yeah, exactly. Just getting a feel for it. Yeah.
And it's accepting that's a valid part of the process as well, isn't it? The human interaction part, and moving away from ones and zeros in a computer.
Yeah, I sort of fell into the editing side and the get things super tight, in the early 2000s, because it was Pro Tools had just come out, and we were all like, oh look, you can move the kick drum like this, and you can line things up, you put everything on the grid. And I spent a few years of doing that, and then slowly you realise that you're just sucking the life out of it. I mean, you can get things tight, but none of those classic records that we listen back to now that have stood the test of time, none of them were done like that. And you listen to an old Sabbath album, it's moving all over the place. It's sloppy as fucking places, but it's a charm to it. It's where technology was at. It's where musicians were at. And I always say an album is a slice of time. It's where the producer was at, technology was at, songwriting was at, what people wanted to hear, you know.
It's like a diary, really, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's slowly, you look at a band's career, you know, something like Priest, where they've had 50 years, and, you know, every album's got that Judas Priest thing, which is probably really Rob, you know, but you know, you can hear where trends were, really, you know. You might say they were jumping bandwagons, but there's also that thing of, you know, you get bands trying to stay current and incorporate what's happening at the time, you know. Yeah. And, you know, all the bands were doing it back then in the 80s. You know, you look at Maiden, they started bringing guitar synths in as well. So, yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting the way things have gone.
Yeah, I look at, well, the tech coming into music. It's kind of, I look at it similar. You can write, I go by Star Wars, right? So it's like, Star Wars, the first one, was like all the effects and everything were like physical things. Everything was made.
It was analog, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was analog. And then they did the prequel things, which were all digital. So you look at the actors, you know, like acting, and I mean, it must have been really fucking hard. You're just acting in a room with, you're talking to a green ball on a stick up here.
Yeah.
So it was just felt all dead and everything else was, I mean, it looks amazing. They could do some crazy stuff. And then you look at the new stuff that's come out, whether you like the films or not. It's kind of they've got a marriage of both.
Yeah, it's a good analogy, that, because it is, you know, things tend to go too far one way and then come back and meet in the middle a little bit, don't they? Yeah.
I mean, I kind of like the way that the blend of sort of tech and like sort of traditional instruments. I mean, the way people use them.
Because, you know, there's always that argument now, you know, it's like with the whole Kemper and Fractal thing, where people are, oh, no, it's got to be a valve amp, and like, oh, no, it's better, you know, but why not use both, you know? Yeah. You can use both, you know, no one's stopping you doing, and, you know, it's the same with recording as well, you know, use some analog gear, use some digital gear, you know, they both got their purpose, and they're both good tools.
Yeah.
Just use whatever to get what you're after, you know. Yeah. If you use a Kemper for some parts on an album, valve amps as well, great. You know, tell me which is which when you listen to it, you know. What was the song any good? I think that's what it comes down to, isn't it? You know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I remember going, when first time I ever heard a Kemper, actually, it was in my workshop. Used to be at a studio in Richmond called State of the Art, and they had, the guys from Kemper came down, and they had an old early 60s AC30 that it sounded great, and they had it cranked, and they did all the sampling and everything, and they were literally had that in one room and then the Kemper on the desk, and they were flicking between the two, and you couldn't hear the difference.
No.
I mean, so sort of sonically that way. I mean, I've gone from playing, when I was in, you know, doing covers bands and stuff, I had a little AC15, which I then got a Kemper, and kind of I flipped it over, like literally one gig we just swapped it over, and none of the band noticed any difference. I mean, I kind of noticed the difference because there was like there's some sort of interaction with it. It's a little bit, it is different.
Yeah. But
sort of sonically,
I mean, my sort of thing is probably, you know, the Kemper will get you 90, 95, 97% there, you know, sonically. Things like, you know, switching, it's amazing what you can do with it effects-wise, and the lack of bleed, all that kind of thing. I think it's brilliant. But, you know, obviously, there is a charm of using a real amp, because you say, you know, the way it reacts a certain way. To me, it's so convenient, because, you know, there's so much stuff in there. And especially if you're doing sort of flying gigs, you know, when I was traveling, doing festivals out in Europe, you know, get your backline in the overhead luggage. It's amazing, isn't it? Really, you know, you're doing a flying gig, you've got your rig there. It's brilliant what you can do. I mean, obviously with Priest, we've shipped backline all over the place, so we can use whatever we want. So I've got a mishmash of everything now. But yeah, I mean, I think for being in the studio as well, it's so creative because you can go from your basic rhythm tone straight to a clean tone. There's no setting up. You know, you can get straight into, you know, being creative and writing. But there is a fun to miking an amp up and getting a new tone. You know, so I don't write amps off now. You know, I've still got 25 cabs here and God knows how many heads. You know, I still love the actual putting a mic in front of a cab and getting something, you know. So,
it's a kind of, I don't know very much about Kempers at all in terms of how you interact with them or not. I can imagine that they are incredibly flexible in terms of for live, for reasons that you've already stated, you know, just the flexibility and the switching and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Being very nimble. But the feeling that you get when you plug into an amp in a room with air moving is it can make you play differently.
That's the thing. You can still do that. You still have it roaring through your back line as well. So you still get that. I mean, the thing is, on the bigger stages anyway, you've got in-ears in, or at least I have. So you do lose a little bit of that actually, because with the in-ears, you're very isolated. But again, there's pros to that because wherever you stand on the stage, you've got the same mix. But the other thing is as well, if your mix isn't good, well, there's something weird going on. You can't step away from it. So yeah, you kind of, oh, fucking hell. So yeah, I mean, there's pros and cons to all this stuff, really. You know, there is a vibe about playing loud in a room together. But I'm trying to save my hearing these days as well. So
yeah, that's
that. Yeah.
What was it like when you started playing with Priest? I mean, what was that?
Pretty terrifying, to be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, I got asked to do it. It was about three and a half weeks before the tour started.
Wow.
The last day of rehearsals in the UK, Glenn turned around to me and said, "Do you think you can do it?" And I went, well, you know, yeah, all right, I'll give it a shot. And I went away and learned 25 songs in 3 weeks, 3.5 weeks. And I was meant to have 10 days rehearsal with him in the US. I couldn't get to America because of my visa. I was actually sat on the curb outside Heathrow Airport waiting for my passport to be delivered.
Right.
Before flight, it was that close. So I got my passport from the embassy and I had 3 days rehearsal with them, 3 afternoons rehearsal before the first show in front of 6,000 people. So it was absolutely terrifying, to be honest. And of course, everyone judges you on the first few shows that are up on YouTube. You know, I was not moving around much. It's like, no, I'm talking about the fucking songs.
Can't hold a big banner up, so I've only had 3 afternoons.
I don't kill them. But everyone goes, oh, it's only Judas Priest, so you know the songs. It's like, yeah, but you don't understand. It's not like you're just jamming these songs in a pub with your mates. You're on a stage, size stage you've never hardly played on before. You've got a spotlight right in your eyes. You've got in-ear monitors with a mix you've never had before. You've got a crew you've never worked with before. And you're trying to remember all this stuff and your head's going like this. It's not an easy gig, you know. But, yeah, I mean, we did all right. You know, we got through it. There's a few little shaky moments in the first few gigs. But, you know, I'd say by about sort of 10 or 15 shows in, it was feeling a lot more comfortable. And, you know, you started knowing where to be on stage and what Rob would be doing. And I was trying to watch Richie out the corner of my eye to know when he was moving backwards and forwards and when I needed to step back or feel the, you know, sort of mirror him a little bit on stage, knowing where to be. So there's all those kind of aspects that people don't understand. And people are very, the fans are very precious about Judas Priest. You know, yet they saw me stepping into Glenn's shoes and they didn't realise the situation I've been put in. And didn't realise Glenn's situation as well, where it wasn't a case of Glenn being replaced. It was me really helping him out because he was he's still in the band. You know, he's still there. He's a big part of the band, obviously. Massive part of the band. But it's just he physically couldn't get up there and do it. So it really was a case of me stepping up and helping him out, really. And that's the way I've looked at it. You know, if on the next run, I mean, I will be doing the next run with them at the moment, the way it's looking. You know, I've learned a whole nother set that we were meant to be starting in May, and obviously we're not now. So that was another 14 songs I've learned. So I think I've got about 55 songs in the in the memory bank.
Well, if it makes you feel any better, someone that Matt and I know, Reeves Gabrels, who plays with The Cure, they headlined Reading Festival, and he had his book of cheat sheets down on that. You can see it in the footage. You can see the cheat sheet book down on the stage while he's playing.
Did he get thrown in last minute then?
He did. I think he had to learn. He was given 65 songs to learn in like a month or something. It may have been less than that. I can't remember. And he just kind of closeted himself away and just spent all day, every day doing it.
The thing with me as well, I've been producing a lot, and I hadn't really been doing a ton of playing before I jumped into this. So, obviously I've been playing in the studio and stuff, but I call it being match fit. You get strength up in your hands. Yeah. When you're playing every day on tour, I've got my little rehearsal rig that I have in the, backstage, but I've also got a little rig that I take around and keep in my hotel room as well. So when you're playing every day for 5-6 hours in the day and then doing a show, you soon get strength back in your hands. But my hands were absolutely so blistered by the time I was doing the first show. Not making excuses, but it was difficult. It really was nerve-wracking.
And I guess they're probably long sets as well, aren't they?
About an hour and a half, hour 40 minutes. Yeah. And the other thing as well, a lot of the stuff is kind of similar. A lot of the lead licks will be around a certain sort of pentatonic type thing that Glen does. So there's a lot of things that were just very similar. When you're learning a lot of stuff, it one bulk, it's like, oh, which one is it again? It was. Did
you ever play the wrong thing? The one from the wrong song?
Yeah, you'd be going into the solo in the Ripper and you'd be playing the same lick that was in Lightning. It's like, not that one. Should be skipping a string there. Yeah. But yeah, there was one or two like moments where it was kind of, but in general, it settled down after a while, so it felt good. And by the time we went out and did the run with Deep Purple, sort of after we'd done the main bulk of the European and the first American run, it felt very comfortable then, and the fans seemed a lot more accepting as well, because they finally, I think they realised the situation a lot more that I was in, but also the whole situation with Glen, where he, when he can, he comes out and plays with us, and he's still part of it. So yeah, we're trying to deal with it the best way we can, really.
Yeah.
Mm. Do you have lots going on the floor as well? So because that's another added nightmare.
Actually not. My eyesight isn't great, so I struggle a little bit. I mean, I can't even read the set list if it's not in big print on the floor, especially with the lights as well. So on all my pedal boards, I program two of the same next to each other. So wherever I step, I've got a 50-50 chance of hitting the right pedal. Thankfully, Rob, my tech, is pretty quick on it. And he's got the same pedal board side stage. We've got matching pedal boards. So a lot of the time, if he's watching me and sees I'm away from the board, he'll do the switching for me. So, yeah.
That's handy.
Yeah.
I mean, I like the two pedal idea.
Yeah, well, again, that's the camper thing, because we can just connect it with an Ethernet hub, and have two camper boards, and it just mirrors it. So it's brilliant. Yeah.
That's mental. So, are you? George was saying that you're working with a band over in, is it Nashville?
Yeah, I'm doing Accept in Nashville at the moment. Yeah.
Wait, stupid question, but do you, when you're doing that kind of thing, do you have to work in kind of Nashville time, or do you work in? So I'm
jet lagged without the travel at the minute. Yeah,
that's rubbish.
I know. Yeah, I mean, this is what I was recording in America before when lockdown happened, and I was gonna stay out there actually, but the more I was watching the news, I was just like, oh, this is going to get messy now. So I came back, and I was meant to go back on the 16th of this month. British Airways actually sold me a ticket. Even though I couldn't get in the country. I phoned British Airways up and said, can I get in the country? They went, oh yeah, we're doing flights. Sold me a ticket, and I was like, but I can't get in the country, can I? No. Okay. So So we've had to sort of work around it a little bit. We've been doing things with Cubase Connect, where I can connect. It's quite cool, actually. It does it all with MP3s backwards and forwards, and then pulls the HD files off Wolf's computer in Nashville onto my computer. But we've had a few glitches, so we've been doing it with Zoom, Audio Mover, and TeamViewer. I've been controlling his computer with TeamViewer, logging on. And it's worked really well. And then we just use Dropbox and send the files back over to me here once we've tracked it. So I can monitor sort of live streaming. It's about second lag latency, which doesn't matter because I'm monitoring what's going on there. And then we talk over Zoom. And it works great, actually. It's like we're in the same room. So it's good. Yeah, it works.
So it could work going forward if this is a long-term reality, then you could work like that conceivably for the.
Yeah. I mean, you've got the interaction with the artist, and you can. The only thing is setting things up. Luckily, Wolf's pretty clued up on things in Nashville, so he knows the computer side of things a little bit and mic placement. And I explained to him, just set the compressor up like this and the mic pre, and he knows it. Where if you were working with someone who didn't have a clue, it'd be a struggle, I think. So, but the most part, it's a good way of working. But the time
less air miles.
Late nights. I mean, I've been up until sort of 3:30 in the morning, just trying to comp vocals, and it's eyes like piss holes in the snow.
Do you find it harder being kind of almost like a night shift worker than you would if you were just in country?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I mean, it is a bit harder on you, sort of, just getting tired and worn down. Yeah. And obviously it would be better if I was out there, but it's just, obviously it's not possible. So
not practical. Yeah.
The way things is.
Yeah. Well, the good thing is, I mean, I had my whole year pulled from underneath my feet when all this lockdown stuff happened. We were meant to be out from May 31st till December 7th touring. And I had John Petrucci phone me up to do his solo record. The Accept thing we're finishing off. I've got Exodus that I'm going to be mixing. Saxon I'm going to be mixing. And then, possibly some Priest stuff at the end of the year, recording, if we can make that work. I don't know, with visas and travel and stuff, but, what it'll be doing at the end of the year. So the year's kind of, it's filled out studio-wise. So I'm lucky to be in a position where I've got another side of things that I can sort of jump into, really.
Yeah, I suppose it's key to have not just more than one thing going on.
Have the day job, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds hideous. I remember when I was saying to my dad when I was a kid, I want to be a guitar player. I was like, well, you've got to have a backup plan.
Yeah, I had all that. Yeah,
yeah, but it's true.
Yeah, it's funny now because my dad didn't think I had a proper job until I got a Swedish Grammy, and then he started bringing friends round to show him.
Really?
Look at that on the wall up there. And then I got that honorary masters last year at Derby University, which I still very nice of them, but I still don't really understand what that sort of thing's all about. But it meant a lot to my parents, which was one of the reasons why I accepted it. They were like, all proud, So I thought, why not? Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah.
So, things are good and things are busy by the sounds of things.
Yeah. I've managed to fill the year out a little bit, so it's good. Yeah.
Here's a kind of slightly left field question. I don't know whether that's just the way my brain works, but do you ever get asked by a band, how do we make this sound heavier? And have you got any kind of go-to things that you'll try and make something sound heavier?
Not really. No, I mean, it's by the time I've got my hands on it, it usually sounds pretty heavy, whatever we're doing. I mean, it's in the attitude of the riff, really. I mean, you get the bands that tune down for their heaviness, but I always think you can write a perfectly heavy riff in standard tuning, It's all in the attitude and the way you play it and what it relates to as well, the key of the song and where it's going, that will give you the sort of the shifts in the song will give you the heaviness in a way. So If I don't, I think a lot of people sort of understand in mid-range. Really, I think compression and mid-range are the tricks. You know, getting the not getting too overly gainy with things sometimes. You know, and it's the punch. Yeah. It's the just getting the low end punch right on things really.
The distortion thing is kind of alluring, isn't it? Because it's a knob, and you can just turn it up, and it'll be heavier if I do that, but it doesn't really work like that. It just kind of the energy dissipates
especially if you're tracking up guitars. You know, you want that movement. You don't want it to be super compressed. You know, I don't know really. I mean, it's all in the song. You know, whether it's heavy or not.
Yeah. Do you enjoy? I mean, this is again. You don't have to either think about it or answer it. Do you feel like you ever made that mistake where you kind of over distorted stuff on records that you've played on?
Yeah, I mean, you'll do things where you listen back now, and it might have just been sort of the trend of the amps that were being used. It might sound a little oversaturated, but you were just mixing to what was happening at the time, really, and what you were feeling at the time. You know, I listened to albums I did 10 years ago, and it's a totally different approach to what I do now with a record. You know, especially drum-wise, I think I'm going for a more sort of natural tone on things now. I was reading something Andy Wallace said the other week, where a photo really is a good way of looking at it, where things are out of focus, but not everything wants to be in focus all the time. Things are out of focus, which makes the big picture. You know, there's certain things that shouldn't be super clear sometimes. And I thought, actually, that's a good way of looking at it, because I've always gone for trying to get clarity on things and trying to make sure you can hear everything. But maybe there should be a bit of that blurriness there sometimes, where it's more of a feel thing than right in your face. You know.
Yeah, exactly. That, what do they call it? It's like book raw or something? The blurry photo. So you've got really short focal length and stuff.
Yeah.
But that does sometimes make the photo. It makes the bit that's actually in focus even better.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's almost like your Star Wars analogy in a way. It's a way of looking at things. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of what's round the edges a little bit sometimes. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Which is it's what's round the edges.
Yeah.
That's a mistake that you can make when you kind of start mixing without any knowledge or insight or information from anyone else. You can try and make everything there all the time, and then you wonder why you can't hear anything.
Well, I've been doing that for 20 years.
I'll bet you haven't.
I mean, maybe some of that blurriness is what I'm naturally after anyway. You know, I'm doing that in a way. I mean, I always say cymbals are the hardest thing to get right in a mix. I mean, just so dynamic. Low end and cymbals are the two hardest things, just because it's so low end can get out of control easy, and cymbals are really down to the way the drummer's played it. You know, whether he's playing hard on a hi hat or and then tickling the crashes. Yeah, it's down to the way a drummer plays as to whether you can get the cymbals to pop out properly or not. You know.
Do you kind of think about that when you're tracking, so that you say, can you go and do that take again, and this time don't wallop the crash or tie it down a bit tighter?
Or I'll change the hi-hats out to like 13-inch hats or something that's got a tonal difference from the crashes, so there's some separation there. So yeah, I mean, the problem is a lot of the time I'll just be mixing, so you get sent something, it's just like, I've got 3 days of pasting cymbals in here, you know.
Oh no.
Yeah.
It hurts.
It's happened a few times. Yeah.
So do you have to do some replacing on drum parts, do you?
Yeah, I mean, if it's not been recorded up to scratch, and a lot of the time, if it's recorded in a small room, especially with a low ceiling, you'll get a snare coming straight back down the overhead mic. So you'll be struggling with that. You'll have a boxiness to the overheads that you just can't get rid of. So yeah, it can be tricky. So try and find a tall room to plug your drums. So many times, I'll get sent live stuff to mix, which is from like an open air festival, And cymbals are so easy because there's no drums coming back down the mics, you know.
Mm.
You know, when you play a drum kit outside, it actually sounds quiet, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It sounds dead. But, but overheads record great because you're not getting anything coming back down and you're just purely getting the cymbals, you know. So you can get them right up. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, enough of that.
Fascinating stuff. Really interesting.
Yeah, man. Well, we're coming to the end of our time together today.
Ooh.
Yeah, I know. But Andy, thank you so much for coming on.
I told you I could waffle.
Yeah, man, it was great waffle. It wasn't waffle.
Champion.
More refined than a waffle.
Good. Yeah, I do tend to go off on one sometimes. Yeah.
I would say rambling rather than waffling, which it's a different thing. Rambling is awesome.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, but thanks so much for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure, and we'll have to do it again sometime.
All right. Yeah.
If you're down in London, come and see us physically. It would be lovely to actually physically meet you rather than just via Zoom.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Whereabouts are you then?
Same place as Matt.
Okay. Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Pop in. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, I've got to go back to making some instrument food for you.
Oh, yeah. Good. Yeah.
All right, mate. So there we are. We are done.
We're done. Good. Yeah. The new pickup works great, by the way.
Oh, wicked! They got it all sorted.
Yeah. What was wrong with it? You know.
Do you know what? I got it back, and I couldn't for the life of me. I took it. When I tested it first, when it got out of the parcel, it was fine.
Yeah.
And then I plumbed it into a guitar. It didn't work.
Yeah.
And then took it out. It was fine. And then it didn't work. And I took the cover off, and it worked.
Yeah.
And then I took it all apart.
Was there an earth or something on the cover? Was it earthing or something?
Yeah. So what it was there was one really tiny wire was actually coming out of because the coils are taped, and there was a tiny part of the wire was coming out of the tape. And when the cover was pressed on,
Yeah.
it was like cutting through on occasion. So there was like it wasn't completely grounding out. There was some sort of weird resistance thing going on.
I think it was grounding one of the coils or something, wasn't it?
It was grounding like most of one of the coils. It was so bizarre.
Right.
But anyway, we found it, sorted it, and it's all fine.
I love the pickups. I mean, I found out about you guys when I had my mate Andy come in. He's just in a covers band up in Sheffield, and he came in here a few months ago, and he got a gold top with, I think it was just the standard humbuckers in it.
Yeah.
But I was just like, what is in that? You know, just when he played it, it just suited the guitar so well. And that's when I got the first set, and I've got those in a gold top now, and it just rings. It's great. And then he had another one that he bought, the one that I sent back to you that was a bit microphonic.
Yeah.
Put the age covers on. I've got those in another Ibanez rocket roll that I've got, a 75 one that's killer. It's got such a good mid-range to it. So yeah, that's why when I bought this one that's over in New York, I bought it on eBay for like $800 with the Floyd on it. That Adam's replaced the Floyd on. I'm just keeping that in America now, just so I'm not paying shipping on it. I'm just going to pick it up next time I'm out there. So no, it's great, really good. Chuff.
Yeah, it was nice. It was nice speaking to Adam. Actually, he's quite a character.
Yeah. Yeah.
Stuff they do looks really really cool.
Yeah, he's actually in with a lot of the big guys out there. He does a lot of the stuff with Van Halen, and he did the big show that was in New York. He had a big part of that. It had all the old Led Zeppelin, Beatles, and Van Halen stuff in it.
Oh,
so
wow.
he's sort of quite well connected out there. So he's a good guy. Yeah.
No, that was all good, man.
Cool. All right. Great stuff.
Cheers. Well, thanks.
Thanks so much, man.
All right. Cool. I'll hopefully come down and catch up with you soon. All right.
Yeah, that'll
Please
be
do.
amazing, man. We'd love to.
Take it easy.
Take care.
Bye.
See ya.